ongoing HR 140, Protecting Speech from the Government Interference Act. Then we'll take a look at some of the debates that was occurring around HR 140. And Matt Taibbi was actually someone that testified um, in this subcommittee. And then we'll take a look at the final vote as well. Well, for the congressional vote, it's got to go through a few steps, but let's start with Twitter files. All right. So Matt Taibbi, Twitter files today. Uh, there's 31 parts, and I'll try to get through them fairly quickly. 1. Twitter file, Statement to Congress, the Censorship Industrial Complex. Okay, with the screenshot, true content, which might promote vaccine hesitancy, viral posts of individuals expressing vaccine hesitancy, or stories of true vaccine side effects. This content is not clearly mis or disinformation, but it may be misinformation or malinformation, exaggerated or misleading. Also included in this bucket are often true posts, which could fuel hesitancy, such as individual countries banning certain vaccines. Okay, so, well, let's take a look. Part 2. Monitor all tweets coming from Trump's personal account / Biden's personal account. When Twitter Files reporters were given access to Twitter internal documents last year, we first focused on the company, which at times acted like a power above government. And going on forward, I'm just going to focus on the posts themselves. If you want to take a look at the screenshot, the supporting screenshots, I leave that up to you. 3. But Twitter was more like a partner to government. With other tech firms, it held a regular industry meeting with FBI and DHS, and developed a formal system for receiving thousands of content reports from every corner of government, HHS, Treasury, NSA, even local police. Just a quick thing based on the screenshot. Looks like they had specific meetings with agendas regarding Russia status, China status, global status, planning for the elections. Number 4, emails from the FBI, DHS, and other agencies often came with spreadsheets of hundreds or thousands of account names for review. Often, these would be deleted soon after. 5. Many were obvious misinformation, like accounts urging people to vote the day after an election. But other official disinfo reports had shakier reasoning. The highlighted Twitter analysis here disagrees with the FBI about accounts deemed a proxy of Russian actors. Let's take a look at this one. Hey folks, I suspended 12 accounts of AR Origins and 10 accounts of VE Origins that were tweeting about Ukraine and Nazis and were clustered by identical event IPs and user agents and or via safety graph. Wow, they were banning anything. Yeah. Anyway, hey, things relating to Ukraine and Nazis, which if you know the history of Ukraine, definitely has a deep root in truth. After reviewing the Calico's account, we're recommending to request an ID in order to obtain another signal about the actor behind the account. While the FBI asserts that the account is a proxy of Russian actors, we found evidence that suggests it is linked to individuals in the Pirate Party in Catalonia and others on the left political spectrum. We also found that the Calico's account has been strangely RTing its own content and then quickly deleting it, racking up more than 3K deleted tweets since last week alone. Six, then we saw disinfo lists where evidence were even less clear. This list of 378 Iranian state-linked accounts includes an Iraq vet once arrested for blogging about the war, a former Chicago Sun-Times reporter, and Truthout, a site that publishes Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky is well-known left, by the way. Number 7, in some cases, state reports didn't even assert misinformation. Here, a list of YouTube videos is flagged for anti-Ukraine narratives. So, I didn't realize that was a thing. I didn't realize how strong the anti-Ukraine narratives was being fought against. Makes sense. Number 8, but the bulk of censorship requests didn't come from government directly. 9, asked if Twitter's marketing department could say the company detects misinfo with help of outside experts, the Twitter executive replied. Here, I'll read the screenshot because it's basically quoting it right from the screenshot. And Pickles, are you comfortable with marketing talking about misinfo by saying that we detected through ML, human review, and partnerships with outside experts? At 1419.57. I know that's been a slippery process, so not sure if you want our public explanation to hang our hat on that. 1433.08. Can we just say partnerships? 1433.34. E.g., not sure we would describe the FBI/DHS as experts or some NGOs that aren't academic. Wow. Okay, so the outside experts, quote unquote, include FBI and DHS. Number 10, we came to think of this grouping, state agencies like DHS, FBI, or the Global Engagement Center, GEC, along with NGOs that aren't academic, and an unexpectedly aggressive partner, commercial news media, as the censorship industrial complex. That's a great term, censorship industrial complex. Number 11, who's in the censorship industrial complex? Twitter in 2020 helpfully compiles a list of working groups, or a list for a working group set up in 2020. The National Endowment for Democracy, the Atlantic Council's DFR Lab, and Hamilton 68's creator, the Alliance for Securing Democracy, are key. 12. Twitter execs weren't sure about Clemson's Media Forensics Lab, too chummy with HPSCI, and weren't keen on the RAND Corporation, too close to US DoD, but others were deemed just right. 13. NGOs ideally serve as a check on corporations and the government. Not long ago, most of these institutions viewed themselves that way. Now, Intel officials, researchers, and executives at firms like Twitter are effectively one team or signal group, as it were. 14. The Woodstock of the censorship industrial complex came when the Aspen Institute, which receives millions a year from both the State Department and the USAID, held a star-studded confab in Aspen in August 2021 to release its final report on information disorder. 15. The report was co-authored by Katie Couric and Chris Krebs, the founder of the DHS, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Yoel Roth of Twitter and Nathaniel Glaker of Facebook were technical advisors. Prince Harry joined Couric as a commissioner. That's actually quite an amazing ensemble. Wow. Okay. 16. Their taxpayer-backed conclusions. The state should have total access to data to make searching speech easier. Speech offenders should be put in a holding area, and government should probably restrict disinformation, even if it means losing some freedom. Wow. Okay. 17. Note Aspen recommended the power to mandate data disclosure be given to the FTC. which this committee just caught in a clear abuse of office, demanding information from Twitter about communications with and identities of Twitter Files reporters. 18. Naturally, Twitter's main concern regarding the Aspen report was making sure Facebook got hit harder by any resulting regulatory changes. 19. The same agencies, FBI, DHS, CISA, GEC, invited the same experts, such as Thomas Rid, Alex Stamos, funded by the same foundations, Newark, Omidyar, Knight, trailed by the same reporters, Margaret Sullivan, Molly McHugh, Brandy Zadrozny, seemingly to every conference, every panel. So it looks like they have a tight-knit group, a group that works together consistently over multiple events, basically holding this thing together. 20. The Twitter files showed the principles of this incestuous self-appointed truth squad moving from law enforcement, intelligence to the private sector and back, claiming a special right to do what they say is bad practice for everyone else, be fact-checked only by themselves. 21. While Twitter sometimes pushed back on technical analyses from NGOs about who is and isn't a bot, on subject matter questions like vaccines or elections, they instantly deferred to sites like PolitiFact, funded by the same names that fund the NGOs. Koch, Newmark, Knight. Yeah, that's pretty awful. 22. Twitter files repeatedly show media acting as proxy for NGOs, with Twitter bracing for bad headlines if they don't nix accounts. Here, the Financial Times give Twitter until end of day to provide a steer on whether RFK Jr. and other vax offenders will be zapped. Wow. So in the list, welcoming any steer by the end of the day, P.T. Best, Hannah, Joseph Marcoya, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Ty and Charlene Bollinger, Sherry Turpany, Riza Islam, Rashid Buttar. Yeah, so I can't. It's hard to imagine Robert F. Kennedy being in that. Well, not hard to imagine, but hard to imagine them having any legitimate justification for putting him in that list, considering how well researched RFK's take on COVID and vaccines, etc., was. Um, yeah, instead of fighting data with data, well, how can they even have counter data um, when obviously it's not true? So basically, they opted to censor him instead. Number 23. Well, you say, so what? Why shouldn't civil society organizations and reporters work together to boycott misinformation? Isn't that not just an exercise of free speech, but a particularly enlightened form of it? 24. The difference is these campaigns are taxpayer funded. Though the state is supposed to stay out of domestic propaganda, the Aspen Institute, Graphica, the Atlantic Council's DFR lab, New America, and other anti-disinformation labs are receiving huge public awards. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, okay, well, if you want to maintain the big tech, so there's a couple of levels to this. Okay, let's say that you let's say you want to argue that Twitter should be, free to do what it wants to do with its own platform. Okay, um, initially, like at one level, that's sort of debatable, considering how ubiquitous Twitter has become, um, as it has become a de facto um, a public forum, if not officially so, right? So, to what extent are you going to hold on to that? But even if you do, they're still not playing by the rules because it is basically It's not just Twitter doing what it wants, it's Twitter doing what it wants at under the pressure of the government. So basically, it becomes the government doing what it wants through the guise of a private enterprise. So that's why Matt Taibbi refers to it as an incestuous relationship. 25. Some NGOs like GEC-funded Global Disinformation Index or DoD-funded NewsGuard not only seek content moderation but apply subjective risk or reliability scores to media outlets, which can result in reduction in revenue. Do we want government in this role? Okay, so if they're basically influencing revenue based on their scores, it is becoming a social credit system. That is very dangerous. All right, 26. Perhaps the ultimate example of the absolute fusion of state, corporate, and civil society organization is the Stanford Internet Observatory, SIO, whose election integrity partnership is among the most voluminous flaggers in the Twitter files. All right. And take a look at the screenshot for a second. Some or all of the content. Okay, of course, Twitter has a. So this is a post by Jake Novak. Breaking news: several Queens Village, New York residents are receiving pre-filled out ballots for Joe Biden and being told to just send them back to the Board of Elections. This is blatantly illegal. Wow, that's pretty crazy. And let's see some higher profile tweets on that narrative flagged by EIP. So EIP was going around flagging all that. 27. After public uproar paused the Orwellian Disinformation Governance Board of the DHS early 2020, Stanford created the EIP to fill the gaps legally, as director Alex Stamus explains here. HC Foundation for Freedom Online. All right.
There was a lack of capability around election disinformation. This is not because CISA didn't care about disinformation, but at the time they lacked both kind of the funding and the legal authorizations to go do the kinds of work that would be necessary to truly understand how election disinformation was operating. So because of the feedback and the ideas from this group, we were able to pull together pretty quickly a project between these 4 different institutions to try to fill the gap of the things that the government could not do themselves.
Wow. Okay. 28. EIP research manager Renee DeRestra boasted that while filling gaps, the EIP succeeded in getting tech partners Google, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter to take action on 35% of URLs flagged under remove, reduce, or inform policies. Wow. Okay. According to EIP's own data, it succeeded in getting nearly 22 million tweets labeled in the run up to the 2020 vote. Well, when they're admitting themselves the extent to which they are violating some key principles, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like it's like a criminal bragging about its crime. In total, our incident-related tweet data included 5,888,771 tweets and retweets from ticket status IDs directly, 1,094,115 tweets and retweets collected first from ticket URLs, and 14,914,478 from keyword searches for a total of 21,897,364 tweets. All right. 30. It's crucial to reiterate. EIP was partnered with state entities like CISA and GEC while seeking elimination of millions of tweets. In the Twitter files, Twitter execs did not distinguish between organizations, using phrases like according to CISA, escalated via EIP. 31. After the 2020 election, when EIP was renamed the Virality Project, the Stanford lab was onboarded to Twitter's JIRA ticketing system, absorbing this government's proxy into Twitter infrastructure with the capability of taking an incredible 50 million tweets a day. That is an incredible scale of monitoring and suppression. So this is another bombshell about to what extent the government had its hand in the cookie jar through Twitter. So they were basically creating, it looks like they were creating lists of tweeters and tweets daily through multiple government organizations, passing that list along to Twitter. And Twitter was more than happy to act on it, either suppressing them or banning them or removing them. And then they would share the results back. And then these different organizations sort of organized into these almost shell organizations like the EIP. So they would basically keep track and celebrate to the extent to which they have been suppressing the American people. So this is a kind of shenanigans that that people are generally not aware of. It's something that the people on the conservative side have suspected for a long time and have been outspoken against. But to what extent? I mean, they can be outspoken as much as they want, but if they're getting suppressed anyway, then it's a disproportionate um, view of things. So, in this kind of environment, like, why does this matter? In this kind of environment, I'm not surprised that just blatant lies are being spread so easily. Like in this environment with that much suppression, I'm not surprised that any kind of truth about Ukraine isn't widely known. Any kind of truth about vaccines, masks, lockdowns, those kinds of things are not known. Still, people are still believing the narrative. People are still saying it, even yesterday, that multiple Capitol police officers died at the hands of January 6 protesters, insurrectionists, they would call them. And it is simply amazing that people can actually still believe that or claim that. Simply amazing. And that's a kind of environment that this kind of nonsense creates. So, uh, knowing that, in order to combat this and having the numbers to do so, so the Republicans have uh, basically put forward a bill, H.R. 140, Protecting Speech from Government Interference Act, um, to combat this kind of thing. So let's go over the overview. This bill generally prohibits federal employees from censoring the speech of others while acting in an official capacity. Specifically, the bill prohibits employees of executive agencies or who are otherwise in the competitive service from number one, using their official authority to influence or advocate for a third party, including a private entity, to censor speech. Number two, censoring the speech of any person who has a pending regulatory application with, or is a subject of, or a participant in an active enforcement action by the employee's office, or number three, engaging in censorship while on duty wearing a uniform or using official government property. Certain presidential appointees may not censor speech at any time, including outside normal duty hours. Employees are subject to disciplinary action, civil penalties, or both for violations. This bill defines censor or censorship to include ordering or advocating for the removal of lawful speech, the addition of disclaimers, or the restriction of access with respect to any platform, e.g., social media. So, in reading that bill, it's really hard to see anybody defending it, right? Like, basically, it is prohibiting federal employees from censoring people. And censorship, it's not just all speech, right? Like that they're protecting. Censorship is defined as removal of lawful speech. So basically, this bill, all it's doing is ensuring that federal employees respect people's constitutional right of free speech. Not all speech, because it says lawful speech, right? So we have a very clear idea of what lawful speech is, based on the Constitution, its interpretation by the courts, and previous judgments from the appellate courts and Supreme Court, right? So we we have a good idea of what speech is allowed and what speech is not. And it doesn't change that. Any unlawful speech that was unlawful before it remains unlawful. Any lawful speech is still lawful. So it is protecting that. It's preventing federal um, employees from interfering with that, whether through social media or a third party company or not. So let's take a look at the actions. So taking a look at the actions, looks like it was introduced in January 9th. There have been several rounds of debate, amendments, and basically there was a House of Representative vote as of yesterday. No, I think it's today. They agreed to vote yesterday, and the vote took place today. All right, so let's take a look at some of the things that were, I mean, at the face of it, it almost seems impossible to disagree with. But of course, politics being politics, every single Democrat in the House of Representatives basically disagreed with it, fought against it. And it's hard to see what kind of arguments they can have. It's not going to be a legal one because this is pretty airtight as far as the legality goes. So what could they possibly say? Let's take a look at some examples. So I'm going to bring up some videos put up by Forbes. All hell breaks loose after Sofia Garcia demands Matt Taibbi tell her about his sourcing. Right. So Matt Taibbi is sort of basically testified the contents of his Twitter files, um, a lot of which is fueling this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I didn't get that last time. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Taibbi, I want to follow up a little bit on the ranking member's questions. When was the first time that Mr. Musk approached you about writing the Twitter files?
So she asked, when did Mr. Musk approach you? Blah blah blah. Note that to date, Matt Taibbi has not disclosed who the source is. He has not named the source. It is simply just somebody in Twitter, right? So this question is sort of loaded. It's meant to sort of trap him into identifying who it is so they can go after them.
Again, Congresswoman, that would,
I just need a date, sir.
but I can't give it to you, unfortunately, because this is a question of sourcing, and I don't give them. I'm a
It's not
journalist. I don't reveal
question
my
of source,
sources.
it's a question of chronology.
Question of chronology. Yeah, so I mean, and that's a garbage argument. Okay, they can say, okay, when was it? Where was it? What was he or she wearing? What vehicle did they arrive in? Or what, like, eventually you can make it, you can ask enough questions to piece together who it is, right? So to pretend that this is not a sourcing question and it's just a question of chronology is completely disingenuous.
No, that's a question of
Because you
sourcing.
earlier said that someone had sent you through the internet some message about whether or not you would be interested in some information.
Yes, and I refer to that person as a source.
So you're not going to tell us when Musk first approached you?
Again, Congresswoman,
So
you're
you have to
asking me
say
to,
yes or
you're
no.
asking a journalist to reveal a
So then you
source.
consider Mr. Musk to be the direct source of all this?
No, now you're trying to get me to say that he
What a ridiculous question.
is the source. I
Well,
just
it
can't answer
either
your
is or
question.
he isn't. If you're telling me you can't answer because it's your source, well, then that the only logical conclusion is that he is in fact your source.
Well, you're free to conclude that.
Well, sir, I just don't understand. You can't have it both ways, but let's move on because there's
No, he
another
can.
area
He's
where
a
you
journalist.
No,
have
he
it
can't,
both ways.
because either Musk is the source and he can't talk about it, or Musk is not the source. And if Musk is not the source, then he can discuss
No one
his
has yielded. The
conversations with
gentlelady's out
source.
of order. You don't get
And
to
she's
speak
out of
every
order
time.
gentlelady is
because
not
he's
recognized. The
interrupted.
gentlelady is
Mr.
not
Chairman,
recognized.
You're not
can
recognized,
reclaim my
Mr.
time.
He
has not
Mr.
said
Chairman,
that.
I don't.
By
What he has
talking
said
about
is he's
his-
not going to
Chairman,
reveal his source, and the
I
fact
did
that
not yield
Democrats
my
are
time
pressuring
to
him
the
to do
chairman
so
or
is
the
such a
regulator.
Not.
violation
We're
of the
asking
First
him
Amendment.
about
I
his
have my
conversations
time
with
back,
Musk.
please.
Gentlelady has not yielded you time. You don't
I
get
have
to
not
just talk
yielded
over
time
her.
to anybody. I want to reclaim my time, and I would ask the chairman to give me back some of the time because of the interruption.
Yeah, you can reclaim the time, but the chairman can also speak.
Mr. Chairman, I'm asking you if you will give me the seconds that I lost.
We will give you that 10 seconds.
Thank you. Now, let's talk about another item that when you responded to the ranking member. You said that you had free license to look at everything, but yet you yourself posted on your I guess it's kind of like a web page. I don't quite understand what Substack is, but that
You don't understand what Substack is? Where the hell have you been, woman?
what I can say is that in exchange for the opportunity to cover a unique and explosive story, I had to agree to certain conditions.
It's amazing, like considering the amount of content that has come from Substack, it's amazing to me that that anyone in the notable office would not know what Substack is. If they really don't know, they're just being criminally ignorant. I don't mean that literally, but that's just freaking ignorant. I can only imagine that I don't know. I mean, the most likely scenario is that she knows, and then she's just trying to throw shade at Substack as not being one of the good sources or whatever. But who knows?
What were those conditions? She asked you that question, and you said you had none, but you yourself posted that you had conditions.
The conditions, as I've explained multiple times.
No, sir, you've not explained. You told her in your response to her question that you had no conditions. In fact, you kind of used the word license, that you were free to look at all of them, all 100,000 emails.
The question was posed, was I free to write about?
Sir, did you have any conditions?
The condition was that we published
Sir,
on
did you
Twitter.
have any conditions, yes or no? A simple question.
It's not as about conditions of what to do what. What are you talking about?
Yes.
All right, could you tell us what conditions those were?
The conditions were an attribution, sources at Twitter, and that we break.
The thing with Matt Taibbi is he's a good journalist, but he doesn't know how to fight back in these word games, right? It's unfortunate.
break any news on Twitter.
But you didn't break it on Twitter. Did you send the file that you released today to Twitter first?
Did I send the,
Sir, I'm
actually, I
asking you
did, yes.
today.
Yeah.
Did you send it to Twitter first?
The Twitter
That was one
files
of the
thread?
conditions? Yes or no, sir?
The Twitter files thread actually did come out first.
But sir, you said earlier that you had to attribute all the sources to Twitter first. What you released today, did you send that to Twitter first?
No. I posted it on Twitter.
You send it to Twitter first. He posted it
First. First,
first before what?
sir. Or did you give it to the ranking member, to the chairman of the committee or the staff of the committee first?
Well, that's not breaking the story. That's giving, yes, I did give,
So you gave all the information that you did not give to the Democrats, you gave it to the Republicans first, then you put it on Twitter?
actually, no, the chronology is a little bit confused.
Well, then
It's more or
tell
less
us
the
what the
same time.
chronology was.
I believe the thread came out first
Where?
on Twitter.
On Twitter. So then you afterwards gave it to the Republicans and not the Democrats?
Yes, because I'm submitting it for the record as my statement.
Did you give it to them in advance?
Advance of what?
I gave it to them today.
You gave it to them today, but you still have not given anything to the Democrats. Well, yeah.
It's on Twitter. Oh my God. You gotta stop these idiots from asking questions. What do you mean? It's on Twitter. It's public. What do you mean give to the Democrats?
And I'll move on. And I wanted to ask Mr. Schellenberger the same question, sir. When did you
Mr. Schellenberger?
first visit with or get contacted by Mr. Musk?
I'm not going to reveal my sources, but like I said, I was invited by Barry Weiss. and
I'm
it
not
was-
asking for sources, sir. I'm just asking
Yeah,
for chronology.
I
When
was-
did you first make contact with Mr. Musk?
I don't know the exact date.
Was it
It was December.
2020?
It was December.
December of, well, there's a lot of Decembers in history.
December of
sir.
last year.
Which December?
December of last year, ma'am.
Last year, the 22?
Yes, that's the last year. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
All right. Now, in your discussion, in your answer, you also said that you were invited by a friend, Barry Weiss.
My friend Barry Weiss.
So this friend works for Twitter, or what is her?
She's a
Independent journalist on Substack.
journalist.
Sir, I didn't ask you a question. I'm now asking Mr. Schellenberger
Well, he's answering for you because you're a retard.
a question. Please
Yes,
do
ma'am.
not
Barry Weiss is a
interrupt.
journalist.
I'm sorry, sir.
She's a journalist.
She's a journalist. So you work in concert with her?
Yeah.
Do you know when she first was contacted by Mr. Musk?
I don't know.
You don't know. So you're in this as a threesome?
A threesome. Do you have anything actually useful to say?
There was many more people involved than that.
There was many more people involved with that. Are you being paid to be here today, either through consulting fees,
No,
campaign contribution to your
absolutely
next
not.
run?
Gentlelady's
Absolutely
time
You
is.
have an interview
gentlelady's
scheduled after
time
this
is
hearing?
expired.
Absolutely not.
Gentlelady's time is
Thank you.
expired.
Thank you.
What? Okay. So I didn't realize how dumb someone could be. And, so thank you for Sylvia Garcia for showing me exactly
I
how.
don't know what to say other than I recognize the gentleman from North Dakota
to
for
say.
5 minutes.
Thank you, yes, Mr. Chairman, and I'll yield my 5 minutes
Oh,
to you.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding. I do think it's worth pointing out that, I have co-sponsored, I think some of my colleagues have co-sponsored the SHIELD Act in previous Congresses with Democrats to protect what we see them trying to do today, protect journalists from having to reveal their sources to government. That used to be a shared position in the Congress. Unfortunately, as we're seeing now, multiple occasions, it's not the position anymore.
As a new small business
Yep. The new position is ends justify the means, and we will play word games to cast dispersions on anyone. That is the game of the day, at least on the Democrat side. Okay, so let's see. I got a couple more of these things. These are just snippets. I mean,
Organized for
this thing has been going on all day for quite a few days, right? So
Material that they've been asked.
I thank the gentleman.
That's the bottom line.
Mr. Taibbi, would you care to, I'm down here on this end, sir. Would you care to respond to the attack on your ethics? You weren't given really an opportunity to answer. And if you'd be brief, I've got a bunch of stuff I want to ask you as well.
Sure, just quickly, that moment on the Joe Rogan show, I was actually recounting a section from Seymour Hersh's book, Reporter, where he described a scene where the CIA gave him a story, and he was very uncomfortable. He said that I, who had always gotten the secrets, was being handed the secrets. Look, again, I've done lots of whistleblower stories. There's always a balancing test that you make when you're given material, and you're always balancing newsworthiness versus the motives of your sources. In this case, the newsworthiness clearly outweighed any other considerations, and I think everybody else who worked on the project agreed.
Doesn't it seem like any reporter who breaks a blockbuster story is going to get attention, and there may be even financial consequences that follow? It seems like as surely as the night follows the day, that's the case, right?
That is true, although I would like to clear up, some things that have been misrepresented. Not one of us has actually been paid to do any of this work. We've all,
Exactly right. They all work for themselves.
traveled on our own. We've hired our personnel on our own, and I've just hired a pretty large team to investigate this issue.
Yeah.
I think basically the publicity that they get for dropping this alone is a high value. Now, along with that comes a notoriety, I guess, on the flip side, and being a target. And by the government, by the federal agencies, by MSM, and anyone that are supporting that crew. And that's pretty big. Like, for example, there's no way that Matt Taibbi could ever work for NBC or anything like that, ever, right? Not that he would want to.
Out of my own pocket.
The fact that the attempt comes from the dais across the aisle to smear you, frankly, I think liberals, if I understand that, in your background, you're both good liberals, and you come in the Democrats' hostility to what you've undertaken is astonishing to behold, but it's part of the picture we're seeing. In Twitter Files number 15, Mr. Taibbi, you exposed Hamilton 68, a website associated with the German Marshall Fund that purported in a dashboard to identify Russian bot networks and became ubiquitously cited by media to identify media stories or narratives that supposedly flowed from Russia. From Russia! You showed that the front man for Hamilton 68 was Clint Watts.
So basically anything anti-Ukrainian or anything critical of Ukraine and the pumping money into Ukraine became sort of cast as a Russian propaganda.
Former FBI agent. At Twitter, the trust and safety executives were ridiculing Hamilton 68 for the ludicrous identifications that it was making, which they could reverse engineer and figure out who those accounts were. And then in Twitter Files number 17, after disclosing Mr. Watt's identity, you disclosed that J.M. Berger is the creator of Hamilton 68. And guess what? He was a federal contractor, right?
He was, yes. He denies that he worked on it for the Global Engagement Center, but he was an employee of theirs until about a month before the dashboard's release.
Just a month before, and he said, I believe publicly, that that the dashboard was the product of 3 years' work. So doesn't it beg sort of the intriguing question whether the creation of this fraudulent Hamilton 68 dashboard was effectively underwritten by government funding?
Yes, I think that's a good question. Certainly the German Marshall Fund, which is the NGO that is at the top of the chain in this organization. It's the German Marshall Fund, then the Alliance for Securing Democracy, and then
Matt Taibbi, man, he's a brilliant journalist and writer, but he's not a good speaker. He's got to work on his speaking game.
Hamilton 68. They're a federal contractor. They received over $1 million from the Department of Defense. They're the board of the Alliance for Securing Democracy, has a former acting head of the CIA, a former deputy head of the NSA, a former chief of the DHS on it. So
I want to make, and the bigger point is hard because the examples sometimes start making it. I want to introduce you to, or introduce the country to somebody else. I think you've mentioned it in one of your writings, Richard Stengel. You know who that is?
yes, he's the former, the first head of the Global Engagement
I
Center.
want the American people to hear from him for 30 seconds.
Basically, every country creates their own narrative story. And you know, my old job at the State Department was what people used to joke as the chief propagandist job. We haven't talked about propaganda. Propaganda, I'm not against propaganda. Every country does it, and they have to do it to their own population.
Every country does it. Every country does propaganda, and they have to do it to their own people, is what Mr. Stingel said. If I understand correctly, he was the head of the G.
Yeah, too many countries do it, and we'd be better off if they did not do it.
Of the Global Engagement Center at its creation, right?
He was, and in his book, Information Wars, there are a number of passages where he talks about creating a whole of government solution to the information problem. He hastened to say that he didn't want to create a quote, information ministry, but what he was describing roughly approximates that.
In the half minute I've got left, he also was associated with Hamilton 68, right?
The Global Engagement Center certainly had ties to Hamilton 68.
I think.
Man, Matt, come on, man. Work on your speaking game.
I think it's closer than that. That'll come out.
Okay. Well, I'd be anxious to hear that.
I hope I'll get yielded in a minute or two from somebody else down the way. There's all sorts of stuff to disclose. This committee has to uncover not that single instance, but this system that you have described. This is the hope that Americans have to set this right.
Partly the fault is with the question asker. You have to know. Don't ask questions that you don't know the answer to, right?
This committee and that hostility shows what we're up against. It's not 3 pillars to the system, it is 4. And you're seeing the left move to crush you and anybody else who tries to expose this. I yield.
I thank the gentleman for his great 5 minutes, and we now yield to the.
Yep, they're going to come after Matt Taibbi and Schellenberger, anybody else that speaks up.
Opening statements. 3 weeks ago, House Oversight had this hearing with
So pay attention. See what facts or evidence that Stacey Plaskett has to bring on this issue. If she doesn't, she is going to resort to emotional language, name calling, laying traps, other verbal games. We'll see.
actual Twitter executives who had actual firsthand knowledge about what happened in 2020. And that didn't go so well for the House Republicans because real evidence showed that there wasn't coordination between
Whether the Twitter executives had actual knowledge what happened or not, they have a strong incentive not to truthfully share their actual knowledge of what happened. They have a strong incentive to share only that which protects them and is beneficial for Twitter.
Twitter and the federal government, as they like the American people to believe, and that all the so-called Twitter files really.
It's not so-called Twitter files. It is a Twitter files. Everybody calls them Twitter files. And this is a really stupid game. Like a so-called Twitter file, so-called journal, so-called this, so-called that. It's idiotic. That's not. So remember what I said about evidence and reason, or emotional language and verbal games, right? This is just all verbal games so far.
Showed was a discussion on content moderation, and that we only got a fraction of the discussion. So now we're back again, no surprise. What else have they got to talk about? Not what's interested in the American people are interested, not what taxpayer dollars have brought us here to Washington.
What the hell are you talking about? I don't know, like if taxpayers are not interested in having their free speech protected, they're stupid. Everybody else is interested about what's happening to their free speech.
To do, and the Republicans have brought in 2 of Elon Musk's public scribes to release cherry-picked, out-of-context emails and
Emotional language.
screenshots designed to promote his chosen narrative, Elon Musk's chosen narrative, that is now being parroted by the Republicans because the Republicans think that these witnesses
Elon Musk crimes, cherry-picked, parroted. It's just all nonsense, right? Where's your argument? Where's your evidence and your reasoning?
will tell a story that's going to help them out politically. On Tuesday, the majority released an 18-page report claiming to show that the FTC is, quote, harassing Twitter. Oh my, poor Twitter. Including by seeking information about its interactions with individuals before us today. How did the report reach this conclusion? By showing two single paragraphs from a single demand letter, even though the report itself makes clear that there were numerous demand letters with numerous requests, none of which we've been able to see, that are more demand letters and more requests of Twitter. In other words, the conclusions are based on a fraction of information out of context, cherry-picked, surprise, just like the
Well, you didn't seem to have any problem with the J6 Commission, which was exactly how it was done. Even worse so, 26 months of data that you sat on. And of course you cherry-picked it, right? And yeah. Let's see how you would react when the data is shown to you as well, right? Is there going to be any facts to the contrary of what's been released through the Twitter files? My guess is it's going to be no.
Twitter files. The majority conveniently forgot to share with the public that in May of 2022, well before Musk acquired Twitter, the FTC had already fined the company $150 million for failing to safeguard users' data.
Fine for failing to safeguard users' data is not the same thing as acting at the behest of federal agents to suppress people. We're talking about completely different things. I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Users, the American people, other individuals, its 150 million users, Twitter had not safeguarded them. Twitter entered into this consent agreement that required it to make regular reports to the FTC, and the previous consent decree between Twitter and the FTC was entered into in 2011.
What are we talking about? This is like a completely separate thing.
Elon Musk might not like this requirement, but Twitter had issues with FTC long before Musk bought the company, and there's nothing political about that.
There is something political about suppressing people for saying anything negative about Ukraine, about the vaccine.
We've asked for the full set of documents that Musk must have shared with the Republicans on the committee, but we can draw some logical conclusions from what we have been given.
Oh, really? Really? Okay, let's go right to logical conclusions from what we've been given. I'm dying to see what this chain of logic is. It's going to be brilliant.
You know what the Republican report actually shows? Two conclusions. First, the FTC has extraordinarily serious concerns about Twitter's handling of consumers' data.
We're still talking about something completely separate. Privacy of data versus suppression of speech.
And that there's something going on between congressional Republicans and Elon Musk. Mr.
What do you mean something going on? Say more, please.
Chairman, Americans can see through this. Musk is helping
see through what? What are we seeing? Say it.
You out politically, and you're going out of your way to promote and protect him and to praise him for his work. This isn't just a matter of what data was.
Okay. Based on what evidence? This is purely mind reading. So she just made a quid pro quo claim based on no facts, but just purely mind reading. Just I don't even know. Like, do you have anything to show as evidence?
Given to these so-called journalists before us now. There are many legitimate questions about where Musk got the financing to buy Twitter.
That's very easily discoverable. It's actually fairly public and wide open for you to review.
We know for a fact that foreign countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and possibly even Russia and China
Possibly even, right? Do you want to take a look at the Hunter Biden
are
files?
investors presently in Twitter. Do these countries now have access to private Twitter user data? What agreements has Elon Musk reached with them? We know how Elon Musk funded the purchase because it's public. Let's look at a slide here. Here's what it shows. Musk got $500 million in financing from Beyonce. That's in highlight for you. A crypto exchange platform run by...
Did she just say Beyonce?
Chinese billionaire. That billionaire has described his funding as a small contribution to the cause. I don't know what that cause is. Musk got $1 billion from Larry Ellison, whose super PAC spent millions on Republican candidates last cycle, including election deniers. Musk got $375 million, highlighted here, from Qatar, which has recently been questioned about its lobbying practices. Musk got $700 million from Vi Capital, a secretive investment fund based in Dubai. And very interesting, as you can see down below, the nephew of...
Yeah, so this is what they do. When they don't have any specific arguments at hand to address anything, they fall back on these, again, I said emotional language, word games. Also, another favorite of theirs is ad hominem and fallacies. So, poisoning the well, all that nonsense.
Of the Saudi king is
That's
Twitter's
hilarious.
second largest investor at a much larger amount. And the chair wants us to think that Elon...
So here's the thing. Let's assume that Elon Musk was completely corrupt. He was taking money, he took 100% of his money from China. Now, how does that counteract the fact that, he's not fabricating the data? This is all data coming from even before he stepped into the Twitter executive role. And this is data that is very, very embarrassing and inconvenient to the Democrats. So, unless you can show that this data was just completely made up, what is this, right? When people stop talking about what and they start talking about who, it means that you're kind of wandering into shaky territory from what's known. And people from all sides of politics do this as well. Like it's like people will be saying and say, well, yeah, it's like one of the very common thing is like it's George Soros backed this and that. That alone is not good enough. What is good, like what needs to be shown, is proof of individual actions. Proof of individual actions that actually amount up to a pattern based on data and based on reasoning. Now, Matt Taibbi dropped a bunch of data. Other Twitter files journalists have also dropped a bunch of data. They don't have the data to counteract that. So they're just falling into this shell game of who and emotional language. Trust this person, trust that person. Trusting someone is a heuristic when you don't have the facts to sort out what to believe. The fact that they're immediately going to that tells me that they don't have any facts to present to you to sort out what to believe.
Elon Musk is the victim. The chairman wants us to believe that the Republicans are concerned with the federal government unfairly going after Twitter and Twitter unfairly...
Have you read Bill H.R. 140? It is completely partisan neutral. All it says is that federal officials are prohibited from suppressing lawful speech, whether through a third party or directly. That is not a partisan thing.
Taking down conservative posts, just like we did several weeks ago, we're going to show that's not what the evidence shows. I want to underscore the very real threat posed by Twitter files and by the witnesses in front of us today. Here's Yoel Roth describing the harassment.
Oh, please do tell us about all these threats that result from free speech that is lawful.
He and other former Twitter employees have faced because of the irresponsible way in which the witnesses in front of us and others have released.
Do you know how much harassment every conservative goes through in Twitter every day?
This cherry-picked, out-of-context data.
Do you have anything else? Is that it?
Twitter. Employees as far away as Manila in the Philippines. The Twitter files, I would note first and foremost, didn't just affect me, but affected much more junior employees at Twitter. Employees as far away as Manila in the Philippines were doxxed, had their families threatened, and experienced harm equal to...
Was there a question I asked that was asked? I seem to have completely missed it.
Or greater than what I've experienced. But concurrent with the Twitter files, Elon Musk also made the decision to share a defamatory allegation that I support or condone pedophilia. And this lie led directly to a wave of homophobic and anti-Semitic threats and harassment against me, of which Twitter has removed vanishingly little. And following the Daily Mail's decision to publish where I live, ultimately I had to leave my home and sell it. Those are the consequences for this type of online harassment and speech.
Okay, who is this guy?
Thank you.
My name is Jim Rickards. I'm a former advisor to the CIA, Department of Defense, and the White House. In a moment, you'll have my own...
All right, well, that was nonsense. Okay, hilarious.
From Colorado, Ms. Beaufort.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, is there anything else?
Point, I now recognize the gentlelady from Florida for 5 minutes.
Let's take a look at one more.
Thank
Why
you,
not?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Taibbi, I want to ask about journalistic ethics and information sources. The Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics asserts that journalists should avoid political activities that can compromise integrity or credibility. Being a Republican witness today certainly casts a cloud over your objectivity.
Republican, what? How? All he did was, what part of that content, like just because the truth that he released is inconvenient to Democrat, that this is a Republican thing? No, he was just telling the truth about the Fed involvement with controlling speech through Twitter.
But a deeper concern that I have relates to the ethics of how journalists receive and present certain information.
I like the picture of Joe Rogan, by the way. Nice.
Journalists should avoid accepting spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion. Would you agree with that?
And they do.
I think it depends.
Really? You wouldn't agree that a journalist should avoid spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion?
If it's true, then all those things could be true, and then a journalist would still report that.
Mrs. Congresswoman, I've done probably a dozen stories involving whistleblowers. Every reported story that I've ever done across 3 decades involves sources who have motives. Every time you do a story, you're making a balancing test between the public interest.
Reclaiming my time. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I ask you this because before you became Elon Musk's hand-picked journalist, and pardon the oxymoron, you stated this on Joe Rogan's podcast about being spoon-fed information, and I quote, "I think that's true of any kind of journalism," and you'll see it behind me here. "I think that's true of any kind of journalism. Once you start getting handed things, then you've lost. They have you at that point, and you got to get out of that habit. You just can't cross."
And the conclusions, not facts, you idiot.
that line. Do you still believe what you told Mr. Rogan? Yes or no? Yes
It's
or
not
no?
a yes or no question.
Yes.
Good. Now, you crossed that line with the Twitter files.
No.
Elon
No, you
Musk,
didn't.
it's my time. Please do not interrupt me. Elon
F
Musk
you.
spoon-fed,
I would interrupt her every chance I
Elon
get.
Musk spoon-fed you his cherry-picked information, which you must have suspected promotes a slanted viewpoint, or at the very least generates another right-wing conspiracy theory. You violated your own standard, and you appear to have benefited from it. Before the release of the emails in August of last year, you had 661,000 Twitter followers. After the Twitter files, your followers doubled, and now it's 3 times what it was last August. I imagine your Substack readership, which is a subscription, increased significantly because of the work that you did for Elon Musk. Now, I'm not asking you to put a dollar figure on it, but it's quite obvious that you've profited from
I accept the consequences of telling the truth.
the Twitter files. You hit the jackpot on that Vegas slot machine to which you referred. That's true, isn't it?
I've also reinvested.
You've made some. No. Is it true that you have profited since you were the recipient of the Twitter files? You've made money. Yes or no?
I
Very
think it's
simple
probably a wash, honestly.
Nope. You have made money that you did not have before, correct?
But I've also spent money that I didn't have
Okay.
before. I just hired a whole group of people to
Patently
investigate.
obvious answer, reclaiming my time. Attention is
No. It's not an obvious
a
answer.
powerful drug. Eyeballs, money, prominence, attention, all of it points to problems with accuracy and credibility. And the larger point, which is social media companies are not biased against conservatives, and if anything, they ignored their own policies by allowing Trump and other MAGA extremists to post incessant lies, endangering public safety and even our democracy.
Wow, Trump and other MAGA extremists.
Hypocrisy is the hangover of an addiction to attention. Now, I want to point out another alleged finding from the Twitter files. Mr. Schellenberger, you've referenced several times this $3.4 million that the FBI paid to Twitter in 2020 that was referenced in General Counsel Jim Baker's email. I first want to confirm that nowhere in the email does Baker say that the money was paid to censor information, take down posts, suspend accounts, or do anything relating to content moderation. Is that correct?
It is.
Thank you. But honest reporting would have explained that the $3.4 million was paid to release information, not censor it. One of my colleagues on this panel repeated your distortions and told Americans this reimbursement was used to, quote, censor certain stories. That's a flat-out lie. Mr. Schellenberger, are you aware of Section 2706 under the Stored Communications Act? It says when social media companies comply with subpoenas, warrants, or court orders, it costs them money, so they get reimbursed. The FBI makes these requests and reimbursements to discover evidence and run relevant to a criminal investigation. Let me repeat that. The FBI makes these requests to help catch the bad guys. That helps keep child
What criminal investigations?
predators off social media sites.
Yeah, but speaking against Ukraine is not a crime. Speaking against vaccine is not a crime. Speaking against Big Pharma is not a crime. So what are you talking
It
about?
helped keep violent criminals off our streets. I support the FBI and our law enforcement agencies. It would be nice if our Republican colleagues did the same and not fabricate explanations for payments
Except for during BLM, mostly peaceful riots, right?
that are defined for clear purposes in federal law. My time is just about wrapped up.
May I
But
respond?
the truth is that social media companies are unregulated monoliths. They pose danger to individuals. They allow posts that bring harm, and that's the bottom line. That the other side will not tell you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman had no time to yield back, but I will let the gentleman, Mr. Schellenberger, respond. And I would also point out that I did not say what the
Mr.
FBI
Chairman, I
paid
didn't
Twitter
a-
for. All I said was they paid Twitter $3.4 million.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. I didn't ask Mr.
You're out of time.
Schellenberger a question.
Yeah, but
My
the witness
understanding-
wants to respond, and the witness have been invited as our guests, and frankly, they've been attacked by the
Well,
federal
please do
government.
that.
I'm going to let Mr. Schellenberger answer that before recognizing Mr. Bishop.
So are you going to do that as we move down the line of questioners?
The gentleman has not been recognized. You had your 5 minutes, and frankly, I think that's at the discretion of the chair. Mr. Schellenberger, you can respond briefly.
I'll be brief, which is that my understanding from those files is that Twitter
It bothers her so much that Schellenberger gets to have the last word.
had decided not to take that money until recently. So if you read that email, what Stasha, I believe, the person that sent it, is saying is that they started taking money after previously not taking it. And I believe that the reason that they had not taken it earlier was because they did not want that financial conflict clouding their relationship.
Mr. Chairman, the money is payment under
out
federal
of order.
law so that they can
gentleman
recoup
from North
costs.
Carolina,
Out of order.
Mr. Bishop, is
For-
recognized for 5
A free champion is waiting for you.
Right. She's desperately trying to have her last word again. When she's out of time. So crazy. All right. Well,
The Committee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government is hoping.
Those in favor, please say aye.
so this is a vote on the HR 140.
Those opposed, please say no.
It happened about
The ayes have
3
it.
hours ago, I guess.
To ask for the yeas and nays?
That's AOC.
What purpose does the gentlewoman from New York?
I'd like to ask for the yeas and nays.
Gentlewoman from New York asks for the yeas and nays. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number have risen. The yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
So basically, it is a foregone conclusion that it would pass because it was split completely down the line of Democrats and Republicans. And the only reason why she's calling for the yeas and nays is that there's going to be a count. There's probably going to be some people are going to let their vote run out. We'll see. Now, I don't know if somebody like, you would think that the squad, including the AOC, would support a bill like this because they're sort of like a little bit of an outlier, right? From the core of the party. Just like the Freedom Caucus are kind of like outliers from the core of the Republicans. But I don't know. I don't know which way AOC is going to vote. I don't know if she's going to be one of the uncounted votes at the end. I don't know if she'll actually use that to sort of try to gain an advantage in the future. Maybe be able to say that she voted for or whatever, or she at the very least she didn't vote against HR 140. I don't know what it is, but we'll see. Why bother with this? Well, I'm glad that they did it actually, because this will show in real time, right? Very clearly how the vote split. And it's going to be like everybody's Republicans going to be yay, and everybody Democrats going to be pretty much nay. Okay, so actually there's 4 yay from the Democrat, 5, 4. Okay, it went up briefly to 5 and then back down to 4. So maybe AOC did side with them. Down to 3, 2, 3. We'll see. All right, let me speed that up a bit. No, back down to 1. Down to none. So yeah, initially a few Democrats voted yay. All of them have since corrected that to nay or a non-vote. So near the end of this thing, 5 no votes from Republicans, 8 no votes from Democrats, 217 over 205. The yeas have it. 218 over 205. 219 over 206.
On this vote, the yeas are 219 and the nays are 206.
Yep, the yeas have it. All right, so that's kind of crazy. I can't believe
does
that
this
they
mysterious-
got that many votes against protection of lawful speech from interference by federal officials. That seems crazy to me. Democrats are firmly, currently, on side of censorship. We have a record of that, and I don't see how they can possibly argue otherwise. So I can see the Republicans keep hammering them with this. Just the way they voted, it's an embarrassment. Okay, that's it. Now next, I'll see if there's anything dropped by Tucker Carlson today. If he did, that'd be a good thing to take a look at. But for now, I'll leave the Twitter files and the HR 140 alone for now. I'm sure it'll come back when it goes through subsequent debates, but we'll see.